going to cut him in half. Get ready. I'm going to try something here. This is a styrene sheet. I'm going to cut it into planes and then put them on the parts of the face that are clearly flat, and I think that'll help me, and then I could put material underneath it to even it out, and we'll see how that works. If I was really awesome, I would be able to model this without sculpting underneath first, but I'm not that awesome. One thing I kind of messed up when I was sculpting this guy is I gave the slope on the nose too steep an angle. It comes out almost at a 90 degrees, so gonna have it more like that. Which is gonna mean I'm gonna need to bring all the material, the bulk of his muzzle up a little bit too, somewhat. Nice thing about working with styrene sheets like this is you can look at it at different angles and see, oh, look at this is clearly tilted that way. And so when you're sculpting, everything's kind of more blobby, and with angles you're in a much better position to see symmetry and be able to detect what the angles actually are. I'm going to start using my epoxy sculpt at this point rather than my clay because wiping dust off your nose with an arm that has more dust on it is not a good trick. Okay, I'm going to use this because I'm right up on the surface of the sculpt, and I might want to start working some details in there. And believe it or not, this stuff is actually easier to carve, even though it sets up like, well, maybe I guess it's less like stone. This stuff is just really hard to sand down by hand. It's great if you have an electric sander, but when you want to get into the little details, not so great. This X-Acto knife can slice through, harden this stuff way easier. But this stuff is still nice and hard and strong. It's just easier to cut. It's also much more expensive. That's why I want to try to do the whole sculpture out of this stuff. Okay, my epoxy clay has hardened, and now I'm checking out my sculpture from several, well, as many different angles as I can, looking for symmetry and proportion and that sort of stuff. I'm seeing a slight problem with the angle of the ocular orbit there towards the nose. These are a little bit different, and I'm asking myself, do I care that much? I'm not sure I do. By the time we get all the details and stuff in there, I don't think anyone will notice except me. On the top, this angle, I don't even know what that would be, like the brow ridge, I guess. They're pretty significantly different, so I'm going to see what I can do about that. Possibly shaving this one down will solve the problem, but it might not. We'll see. And yeah, so I think just going to be doing some more carving for a while. come here. I want to talk to you for a second. All right, so not that. Back up. There. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm working with this epoxy sculpt, and you may notice that my shirt is changing relatively rapidly, and that is because I'm doing much shorter sculpting sessions, because this stuff has about an hour and a half working time, and so it demands a certain sculpting cadence, if you will. I do some stuff, I let it set up, and then I come back and do another layer, sand down what I've got, fill in the holes, and so that's what you've been seeing, and what you will continue to see for a little bit until I have the head completely blocked in and all the angles and stuff where I want them. And we'll go into more detail about that once we start doing the detail work on the skin and fingernails and all that kind of stuff. So just keeping you informed of what's going on. So my shirt is about to change again. Oh hey, look what I got. This is a sanding block. I've been using sanding sponges. Problem with sanding sponges is that they are spongy. And when you're trying to sand hard, flat angles, it's not so good. It's good for doing round surface, but I'm trying to do angular things. With these, you just put the sandpaper in. You can see there's these scary little teeth in there. And then make it as tight as you can. Push it in place, trying to not stab your own fingers. It's not like with the X-Acto knife where you really want to, you know, test it by digging down to the bone. With this, you just want to graze yourself lightly. And see what that's doing is with the sanding sponge, as I was sanding, because it's spongy, it pushes down along the edges as it goes, and so it's making kind of a round bevel around the edges, and I really don't want that at this point. I'm going to go in and add little nicks and scrapes and chunks taken out of it and stuff, but I don't want it to really be rounded per se, or a little bit, because there's a little bit of weathering, but not too much. And because this is a much harder surface, when it goes over the edge, it's not scooping down on the edge of it. If that makes sense. Probably doesn't. As you can see, obviously, I switched to the sponge because I'm working on a rounded part. And stiff things don't work well on rounded parts. Okay, now you may have been noticing that I've been using a couple different materials on here that are, some of them are different colors. So I've got the white plasticine, what is this called? Styrene. This white styrene that I've been using to make the nice flat planes on there. And the gray epoxy sculpt. And so, it's kind of hard to make out how the whole thing works together. So that's what this is for. I'm going to do some just light coat of primer on there that's gray, and it just brings everything together so you can tell better what it's actually going to look like. Me not talk good today. No, you listen to me. But as you can see, it makes it pretty significantly different. It all comes together. So I like to do that from time to time. All right, the stuff's dry. Stuff being primer. So let's check it out. I can see that I've still got a bunch of little edges to fill in, rough spots to sand. That's the beautiful thing about primer, is it makes it, gives you a new clarity of the overall form and surface details. I guess that's the most important thing. Now, something that a lot of people don't realize is that as you're going, priming and then doing more sculpting and sanding, priming and doing more sculpting and sanding, it's a totally legit thing. You don't have to, a lot of people just think you wait till the very end, till you're done sculpting, and then you do the sanding, priming stuff. I think I learned this from the Shiflett brothers, is that they're just constantly, and they use Super Sculpey Firm for the most part. And yeah, I mean, from the point where they even have a bunch of wires and stuff exposed, their armature and everything, they're still like constantly spraying it with primer to just get a sense of the overall feel. So it's an important thing. Do it. Serious. Do it. Don't not do it. The other thing I did on the last step was I made a nice cozy little pocket for the battery pack to slide in and out. I think I mentioned before that he has glowing eyes and a little glowy thing on his head, so I got these LEDs to stick in there. I know it's only been like 20 minutes since I said that for you, but for me it's been like 3 months. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to do a little more sanding and polishing on this guy, and then I think we're ready to fill in all these blank spots on his cheeks, and give him some horns. And at that point, I think we're going to be done with the block-in phase. Yay! So with files, they get clogged up if you're filing stuff, which is usually what you do with files. Okay, this is a wire brush. I don't know if it's brass or something, but if you do have files and you're doing filing, always have one of these. Otherwise, they just get clogged up, and then it's just like rubbing your finger over it instead of a file. Another file tip is that generally you want to use the biggest file you can. So this is like just barely fits in that little spot, but it's the one I'm using. I have these smaller ones, right? And if I was using that one, I'd be able to fit it in a lot better, but then I end up with a less even surface. That goes with pretty much everything with sculpting. You want to use the biggest tools you can until you've maxed it out, right? Until you have no choice but to go to a smaller tool, and then you go to the next biggest one you can possibly get away with. That's how you keep from getting wobbly, uneven surfaces, and it keeps you from accidentally putting too much time into details that that turn out you have to wipe out and do it over again. It's just a good habit to be in, is always use the biggest thing possible. A really nice thing about the primer also is that when you're doing your refining, your sanding, and your filing, is that you'll see, especially if the color material underneath it is a different color, so you can see that little shape, and that just clearly indicates, oh look, that was higher. And so you just keep sanding down until there's a smooth transition between the primer and the material underneath.